It's Talking Trash with Will Nash, and I'm so excited to be back with you here. Thank you so much for watching and for listening. It is so important to do good things for the environment and to give back and preserve our planet for as long as we possibly can. There are a number of ways that you can do that. One of those ways is by having a conversation with Andee Pelan, who's joining us here today on the podcast of Living Green Barrie. Andee, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
I'm so excited to have you here. Now, of course, you have an amazing local organization called Living Green Barrie, where you are, I know, very busy. And and at Bush Systems here, we have collaborated with you a number of times, and fingers crossed, we'll keep doing that.
Fingers crossed.
What is Living Green Barrie? Tell us a little bit about the history of it and where it is now.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So Living Green Barrie is one of those simmering things that seems to almost have always existed, but in always different forms. And the reason is it was formed in 1991. A bunch of volunteers, or not even volunteers at the time. At that time, it was just concerned people going, you know what? No one's doing anything about the amount of waste that we are creating. And this is sort of before the Blue Box program, before a lot of recycling was happening. And so they started going, well, what can we do about it? What can we do about it? And that's really the roots of Living Green Barrie, are a bunch of people seeing a problem and going, well, what can we do about it? And really it's formed for over 30 years of that similar type of thing, where it's, well, what can we do about it? And that's really the crux of what we're doing right now. So in that last, over 30 years, we have started with plastic recycling. We actually were the first to do plastic recycling in Barrie.
Wow.
And how that originated was people would bring their plastics down to the Armory building across from the McLaren, and the volunteers would sort it, and then they would literally drive it in their cars to a spot where they could turn it into plastic lumber and things like that. So that's our roots. That was the first program. And then they became a registered charity, and then got into home and energy water retrofits, trying to things around the house. Be Green Barrie was the program at the time, and installed over 10,000 low-flow toilets and shower heads. Energy retrofit. It was this massive program until the government of the time pulled the plug on everything, and everything went back down. They had staff, they had leases, and now went back down to a handful of volunteers sitting around going, well, now what's next? The next thing was community gardens. We should have a community garden. So they put in the first community garden. Then the city took that program on. Then it was like, well, what are you doing about all the garbage cleanups? There should be garbage cleanups. So then we started this program called Spring Into Clean, which again is another one of those annual programs from the city that everyone kind of resonates with. Again, that was us. So unlike a lot of other businesses that are like, please don't steal our ideas. We're like, please steal our ideas. Like, run with it.
Take them and make them even bigger than they already are.
100%.
Now, what is the perception of kind of like do-gooders or helping out, kind of giving back, reducing waste, whether you're tree planting, whatever it is that you're doing in support of Living Green Barrie and in support of the community? What is the sort of public perception of what you do? Like, does it come with a lot of positivity? Do you have your challenges? Because I know for a fact you're a very positive and energetic person, but I'm sure you had your challenges too.
Oh, 100%. So one of the things, I came on 6 years ago, and when I came onto the organization, it was again one of these boom and busts. We were back down to more or less a bunch of do-gooder volunteers sitting around going, what should be the next thing? And when I came on, what we decided to do is like, let's really figure out what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. And so the big one was like, we all sat around, we talked about it. And again, these are people that are very passionate about recycling, very passionate about tree planting, very passionate about energy retrofits, electric cars, like just all the myriad things that could be living green. And we realized that the elephant in the room was climate change. And the fact that you had this massive thing that was so daunting and so scary that people just weren't. They just weren't dealing with it. They weren't like resonating with it because
Yeah.
it's too big. And then it suddenly seemed like, well, no, that's the government. It's not us. The
Right.
government needs to do some things and it's not us. So that really became one of these things where we took some of this energy, some of the negative energy where people were just like, oh, why are we not doing anything? And the
Right.
positive energy, like, we should do something, you know,
Yes.
and take both those kind of spirits and put it into trying to figure out what we should do to get people to be able to resonate with something so big and daunting and scary. And I often say it's that classic, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
The answer is don't eat elephants, they're endangered. No, the answer is one bite at a time.
Right.
Right. And so what we're doing now is, yes, we had very few resources, but we decided to take the biggest issue that no one else can deal with. And that's the one we're going to pick.
And that's just it. And talking climate change doesn't sound like something that would be easy to tackle overnight.
No. But so what we've done then is we took this big issue and we decided to do the one bite at a time, and we broke it down into monthly actions.
Right.
And thus now we have our 12 actions for climate that are assigned to each month of the year.
Love that.
And then every year we'll repeat that same cycle over and over again. And ideally, if we're successful, then everyone knows that in June it's tread lightly, which means how do you get around in your environment? And every May, it's plant trees because that's a direct climate action. And every September, it's eat more plants because that's a climate action. So we have this rotating array of monthly actions that we have assigned, obviously, some verbiage and things around it, but also events and activities and conversations and everything all around that. And I will say that the number one action, the one that we start with in January, is be hopeful. So
I love that.
That's not even,
Because you're in the dead of winter, possibly snowed in somewhere, depending on where you live, like if you're anything like where we live. And it's like, you know what, starting off the year with hope is such a positive way to, we'll start a new year.
Yeah. And I think that's been one of the biggest barriers to climate action,
Right.
is that people are not seeing themselves in it because it just seems too big.
Overwhelming.
And so when we talk about be hopeful, it's really about, we are taking the conversation away from the fear of climate change, which has just led to apathy. And now we're saying, okay, instead type into your search bar, reasons for hope about climate change. And you will see there is a ton of stories out there. There's a ton of information that is not being fed to people. And then, so it's not like we have to create it. This is all content that is out there because there are a lot of good reasons to be hopeful. And there's a lot of good reasons why people should be engaged with this. And then one thing that we really want to say is that if you're feeling climate anxiety around some of this stuff, get involved, start doing one of these other actions, and then suddenly it's not as scary anymore because now you're becoming part of the solution.
And one of the things that is interesting to note, we're talking a lot about climate change and how almost intimidating or overwhelming that can be. And maybe people wouldn't initially think of this as one of the first things with climate change, but how does climate change connect to composting?
Sure. And again, so we go through these monthly actions. We have tree planting is a big one of our actions. We actually have it kind of tongue in cheek on there twice because there's 2 months of the year that are really good for your planting tree.
We love it.
So plant trees in May, plant even more trees in October.
Perfect.
But in March, our action is reduce waste. So reducing waste, that, there's recycling. And that's when you talk about like sort of the stereotype of the environmentalist, it's about that person that, like, the first thing that someone says to me when I say what I do for a living, they're like, oh, they start telling me about how they recycle. And I'm not going to lie, I think to myself, when someone says, well, it's the least you could do. It really is.
Hey.
Like, it's kind of like, the least you could do.
I think I need you to come and sit in the middle between me and the guest every time we have a podcast episode, right? When people are saying about the challenges of recycling. So that's a very good point.
That's true. But I mean, it really is something that's like, it's because of these, we've ingrained these behaviors. Like at one point you could just smoke a cigarette wherever you were, right? And then it became not only laws that changed, but also social attitudes. And like you just wouldn't do that because you'd be a real jerk for doing that,
Right.
And so
Yeah.
those are the kind of things, the behaviors that come in. So recycling is a great one for that example, where people are coming to recycling because you wouldn't want to be seen as somebody who doesn't do it.
No.
Right?
No.
So I think composting is kind of the next evolution of this.
Even though it's been around for a while, it's
100%.
still the retraining and the re-education.
Exactly. But it's a direct climate action. So I like to say here in the city that you kind of have two options. So do you have a yard? Do you not have a yard? So again, if you don't have a yard, your options for composting are a little different.
Yeah, a little bit different, yeah.
Yeah, a little different. Your neighbors might not appreciate it, you composting so much, but there are options for doing it. Because of course we have the green bin, municipal green bin program to collect your organics, and it's such an important thing to at the very least you could do is use your green bin, because again the green bin is so important for so many reasons as a climate action. So at the very minimum is that everything decomposes. And how it decomposes is whether it has oxygen or it doesn't have oxygen. So if you have a half-eaten taco that you just throw into the garbage.
Wait a minute though.
Yeah.
Who is not eating a whole taco? That is my first issue.
Well, a monster that clearly somebody who maybe has some mental health issues that they are unresolved with. But anyway, so they've taken their half-eaten taco because of them being a monster and all, and they've thrown it right into the garbage. Now that taco is going into the landfill, and the landfill is an anaerobic environment. It doesn't have oxygen. So now the taco is still going to break down, but it's breaking down without oxygen, and so now all of those microorganisms are releasing, the bacteria are releasing methane instead. So methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. In fact, it's like I've read anywhere between 20 to 30 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So even more important to not have it break down there. In a composter, that same half-eaten taco now is going to be broken down, same thing, but now with oxygen in there, and instead of it being released as a contributing to climate change, it's actually turned into nutrients that feed a soil so you can grow more corn, so you can make more tacos.
Which is beautiful, which is all the solution to everything, isn't
it? I feel like every talk I have has the word more tacos in it at least once.
Approved right here. Approved at Talk and Trash 100%, right? And that's the thing. It's like, I know sometimes people's intentions are good and they want to compost and they want to make sure they're putting things in their little mini green bin, maybe under the counter, and then bringing it out to the garage where you have the larger green bin. What do you say to people who, oh, you know what, that's too much work, or that's too much effort, or, I don't have time for that because I have a busy schedule. I got to drop my kids off at hockey and soccer practice and dance. What do you say to people who kind of, I don't say argue you on that, but challenge the expectation of why I should be composting?
Well, okay, so if, you don't want a good relationship with the world, you're like, the world, what's the world ever done for me?
It only brought me here.
Then I don't know if there's anything I can really help you with on that one. But if you're like, no, you know what, I'm going to feel better. If I have a positive relationship with the world, if I understand my place in the world and I make sure I'm not a wasteful part of this world, but I'm actually contributing to it, and what I do does matter. So again, if you get to that, existential or that tangible kind of feeling of intrinsic value to it, and know that you're not contributing to a problem, but you're actually contributing to a solution, which is it's better to sleep at night if you think you're contributing. I think everyone wants to do good. Almost everyone. Well,
it's funny because you talk about, having a problem with the world having a problem with you, but you raise a good point, right? Where it's like you want to have healthy relationships with your partner, your kids, your family, your hopefully your coworkers and your bosses and your family and all these people who sometimes drive us nuts, but at the end of the day, you want to have a good relationship with those people. What is more important than having a good relationship or a healthy relationship with the land that we stand on, right? And the planet that we live in, which, Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, we are so fortunate to be in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we've got access to clean water, to clean air, to resources that are just at an abundance. So the idea of being wasteful with it, I think, is so deeply disrespectful, you know, and that's really one of the things that we see a lot with settlers, you know, like people who aren't indigenous, that there's a little bit of a, you know, you need to reconnect it because we don't have those cultural things that deeply embed those relationships into our daily practice, right? Whereas a lot of indigenous cultures wouldn't have ever been wasteful because it was part of their culture. So we're looking for culture, we're looking for connection. So composting, it's a little thing, but it does mean that you are more connected to your environment, to your community, to yourself and your place on this earth.
Now, if you are watching or listening to the Talkin' Trash podcast right now, you're not local, maybe you're somewhere in Europe, maybe you're somewhere in the US, and they're watching and listening to Andee Pelan from Living Green Barrie and be like, man, I want to do what she is doing in my community. I want to get involved. And I don't know if activist is the right word or not, but how can you grassroots level start up something like that in your own community? Because I know you've been involved with this organization for a while, but you obviously, you know, had a life before this. So, you know, like how can people get involved?
Did I have a life before this? Okay, if you say so, I must have.
It's like, you know, how can people get involved in this way? Because I think what you're doing is just so impactful.
Yeah, I think honestly, every community has that group, like that group in 1991 here in Barrie that just sat around and got together. And I mean, they literally had to put an ad in the old paper.
Yeah.
Hey, is anyone interested in talking about environment? Like it had, you know, and now we have so many more easy ways to get a hold and find your people. So there's lots of resources out there to connect people to it. And honestly, when you find your people, right, and you find your common goal, and then you figure out how you can make a difference, those groups exist everywhere. I think one of the big things is that difference between a resourced outfit, like you know, one of these ones that have money, have staff, have regular programs, and then these not-for-profit little grassroots that kind of crop up all the time. And that's really, you know, where the interface is between like action, you know, a little bit of action and a lot of action. But sometimes, again, thinking back to the people before me at Living Green, they were like, we should have a community garden. And then there's a community garden. And, you know, it just really does take that little bit of a spark, finding those people that have that common interest and getting out there and, you know, connecting yourself to where you live, wherever that might be.
Connecting to your community is a huge thing,
100%,
right? One thing I want to mention too is you can connect to Living Green Barrie online as well. You're really active on your social media, specifically on Facebook and on Instagram. Hopefully I'm not missing anything with that because I know that you're all over the place. You're on Bush's feed. I know that for sure. And thank you so much for this conversation because it was great to have a conversation with you. And I know that we're happy to be involved with Living Green Barrie. We've worked together before. I know we're going to work together again. More tree planting, 2 months of the year, at least, right?
Yeah, at least 2 months of the year.
And we really appreciate you being here on behalf of Living Green Barrie. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Great to talk to you.
Thank you. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode when it drops, and give us a rating. 5 stars only, please. It's been Will Nash on Talkin' Trash.